Welcome to the Social Purpose Exchange. I'm Sean Mallon. Here's a proposition that's turning the business world on its head. An obsession with delivering profit to shareholders above all other considerations isn't necessarily such a great business model anymore. Customers, communities, employees, and even some shareholders are now demanding that corporations do better, that they make a real and meaningful contribution to improving society. That's social purpose. And the Social Purpose Exchange is a forum for what we hope will be provocative, enlightening conversations about this concept that is revolutionizing the business world. Our guest this week is Barrie McKenna, who is a journalist and was for many years a senior reporter and columnist with the Globe and Mail's Report on Business, and someone who spent a lot of time observing corporate think. Welcome to the Social Purpose Exchange.
Thank you.
So 30 years, pretty long time covering the business beat. Let me ask you first, what attracted you to that particular beat and what held you in it?
I was always interested in business. I actually wanted a career in business, and I wound up in university switching over to history and economics and kind of went a different direction. But I was always fascinated with the way companies work, and so I just kind of fell into it when I got into journalism.
So 30 years is, you've got the long view at how corporate think evolved over that time period. And I wonder if you've noticed the shift that we're going to be talking about in terms of corporate leaders starting to think a bit more about doing good for society.
Absolutely. I think more in recent years, in the past 5 to 10 years, it's become more of an imperative. So there's a lot of external factors forcing companies to change, whereas before it was just sort of seen as being a good corporate citizen. You did good for your community. If you're a larger country, you might do something for your province or your country as a whole. But more recently, the way the world has moved, particularly on climate change, that things are happening so fast, and all these external pressures are coming to bear on companies, and they have no choice but to come to the party. It's
really become a basic business decision, I take it, hasn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, for many companies, depending on what industry you're in, it's do it or you no longer exist, I think, is the very near future for companies.
But even for the ones not directly impacted by the climate change, I guess we all are affected by climate change, but less directly impacted, what's driving it, do you think? Is it demand of customers, demand of society, demand of employees? What do you think?
I mean, I think it's all of that. People want to work for companies that they're proud of, that have values. Customers want to give business to companies they believe in, and it's more than just the transactional aspect of it. And then there's huge societal pressure and government pressure. So really, it's coming from all sorts of different directions.
I guess if it gets to the level of Larry Fink of BlackRock writing letters about it, does that indicate this is kind of bubbling up to the point where the head of the world's largest investment fund?
Right, and he's not alone. I mean, there are big pools of investment capital in other parts of the world are saying that they're going to put certain filters on how they make their investment decisions, and they have very strict criteria, and they're starting to apply them to companies that they never did in the past, and in ways they never did in the past, and because they've started to see, I assume, the track record of the companies that meet the sorts of attributes they're looking for, and they've seen the performance of those companies versus others who might not have those attributes. And so they realize that they can still make money and possibly make more money by going to the companies that have it all, that have the complete package.
When we were speaking before we started rolling, you mentioned that Europe is farther ahead than North America in this. How so? And give me some examples.
Particularly in sustainable finance, this is an area where you link certain goals, environmental, social, governance goals. You track them, you monitor them, and you audit them externally. And then you link either your bonds or loans to those companies based on performance on those measures. And European companies are way ahead, largely because of the climate side of the equation, but not entirely. So there's a big utility in Italy called NL, and what they've done is they link their loans to their actual performance, and it acts as an incentive. And if they meet their targets, they get a lower interest rate. And if they fail to meet their targets, they pay a higher interest rate. So there's and they realize that they can meet these goals, and they can also achieve lower cost financing at the same time. And they're doing it by meeting certain emission targets, converting their suite of of generation facilities to wind and solar, and away from carbon emitting sources.
The name of this program is the Social Purpose Exchange, talking about social purpose, but you're not in love with the term social purpose.
I don't have anything against the term. I mean, I think it's just because I don't have a clear definition necessarily of what social purpose is, but in concept, it's companies doing the right things for the right reasons, and you can't disagree with that.
Of course, but the more one of the many other terms flying around, of course, is ESG, environmental, social, and governance. There's been some recent controversies, I'm sure you know, about how to measure that, about how some companies might be claiming they're good players on this, but upon closer examination, maybe not so much. Do we need to, as this conversation bubbles up, whether it's social purpose or ESG or sustainability, whatever term you choose, do we need to do better? Does the corporate world need to do better in terms of developing and being transparent with the metrics on this?
Absolutely. I mean, currently there are multiple firms sort of doing these audits. They're all measured in different ways. These firms are paid in different ways, and it's not always transparent to the outside. I think you can start with regulators by requiring disclosure of certain information in certain ways. And then once you've got the transparency, then doing the audits is a whole lot easier, and you're comparing apples to apples because all the companies are doing it in the same way. And that's really what the Canadian industry and some sort of thought leaders in Canada are pushing to get to that point, so that international investors will be able to look at Canada and say, this is a jurisdiction that is doing it right. They've got full disclosure. You don't have to guess about these targets. You don't have to guess about the emissions because they're fully disclosed on a timely basis.
But given the way we started the conversation, that this is a growing trend, this is something that's being demanded more and more of, there is a real imperative to do better in this regard. If we're going to be competitive internationally, Canada needs to do better. Yes?
Absolutely. And the rate at which that reality has come about is accelerating because of the investment behavior. And we've let it lag for too long. And so, I mean, Canada needs to do a better job. And it can. It just does take a certain focusing of the mind, and some of these are big steps for companies that have been used to doing things a certain way for a very long time, and expect, the normal, the great days of the past to somehow return. But for a lot of them, it is not going to come back to the way it was, and so they're going to have to do things much differently.
And do the right thing. So good for us all, we hope. Good to talk to you, Barrie.
Good to talk to you.
And that's the Social Purpose Exchange. I'm Sean Mallon. This program also exists as a podcast, and I invite you to check it out wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.